Hi there, that's right, it's the great and glorious, soon to be famous one day in Dutch, back off the camera again, one more time. It's very late at night, I haven't slept, I've had this time that's come upon me, which is only the kind of time which a person who has had a very severe intellectual or emotional struggles could go through. This is like the kind of moment when a person struggles with their faith, their identity, trying to work out whether their political ideology is right for them or really theirs. Or when a person is going through working out what aspects of their upbringing and history are appropriate for them to take with them on to later in life. The sensations that you get inside your mind, and sometimes to a certain extent within your body, is extreme. It's almost like there are two different aspects of your being which are fighting each other. There's waves of stress and anxiety that seem to flow through me, which is of course daft, because I've gone beyond all of this kind of stuff, and I went beyond all of this kind of stuff many years ago when I was doing my approach to occultism, when I was going through my approach to, magic, so to speak, and also theological things, and working out where I stood, and working out where the identity, my personal identity was. But why on earth would I be going through this all over again? And it's come about because I've been looking more and more into Deism and taking the concept much more seriously than I previously thought I would. Sure, the word Deism implies free thought, but there are schools of Deist thought, and the most common ones regard nature itself as being created by God, or there is a suggestion that God created the Big Bang, or was there before the Big Bang. And there are lots of arguments which are portrayed on websites which are dedicated towards Deism, and therefore by inference freedom of thought, which have a direct correlation to what I've seen being argued against. The arguments which came out of creationism. And this is confusing for me, because Deism had become, in my mind's eye, something which is, I suppose, an upgrade. And maybe, in my mind's eye, I've always been looking for an upgrade, because I'm still a human being, okay? I've still got that need to pigeonhole myself into a group of people. And that's another reason why I was choosing, or trying to choose Deism, because it allows freedom of thought and individuality, and there's not necessarily any real conformity. But then I see all these arguments which are encouraging conformity, which are encouraging a sense that we have to see a literal God literally creating the literal universe. And I don't believe in it one little bit. It's almost shocking to me that there are people who believe in the age of reason, so to speak, who would take to designing their own literalism. I've had a look at a number of blogs associated with Deism, and there are a few people who have very strong natural science backgrounds who go into great detail about atoms and molecules and the cells of the body and use specific examples in the manner of an intense logical fallacy to attempt to prove the existence of a literal God, which is, of course, irrational and thoroughly unreasonable. And to be honest, I'm rather shocked. I have seen very few writings suggesting the possibility that God could be an analogy for something, or indeed the creation could be an analogy for something about God, or creationism applied within deism could be analogous and not literal. I ask myself, am I now getting myself headfirst into another group of religious literalist lunatics? Or am I getting myself involved with a group of people who have the capacity to think outside a box? Or are they, like myself, when going through these moments of challenging myself, trying desperately to find the box that they can put themselves into, and because they are now in a free-floating area of not knowing, getting anxious, and therefore turning to something which appears to have some form of stability and consistency, namely suggesting that nature's God, the God of the creation of nature, is the one true God, and all others are false, and that there was a literal creation. Now, I can conceptualize of abstracts. We all can. There are idols which even secular people worship to a certain degree. The image of justice that might appear above your law court buildings, you know, the woman holding scales in one hand and a sword in the other, for instance. It even, of course, appears on one of my delightful tarot cards. This is an idol. We do not believe in justice literally. We believe in the spirit of the being, the essence, the idea or the ideology behind justice, and trying to get a more complex understanding of what it means. And for this reason we have social institutions designed to mete out justice in a manner which is ethical, or that's what we try and do as humans. So if we as a species cannot be pagan literalists when it comes to the concept of justice, why on earth is it that the moment we consider concepts such as creation and God, do we have the humans instinctively go into literalist mode? I mean, it's really quite shocking. One of the badges or emblems which is employed within deism is something very similar to the Illuminati pyramid. You know, it's a pyramid which is uncompleted with a capstone which is radiant with light, which is positioned above the uncompleted pyramid, to suggest that everything which has been created so far has taken us to a certain level, and it's going to be humans' light of reason which is going to carry on completing the work. And so therefore it's an expression of reason, and that reason itself is a superior force which is going to carry humanity forward into the future. And so there are people who are using this emblem of reason, success, progress, science, understanding, and logic to justify something which is not proven, built upon logical fallacies, and taking this thing literally. It's actually quite frightening. I'm reaching this point of thinking that there are no groups of people in the world who do not have literalists. Well, sorry, no group of religious people in the world who do not have literalists. Which is fascinating if you compare and contrast that with the concept of justice, which humans have idolized and turned into the woman holding the scales and the sword, but people do not believe in as a literal woman holding the scales and the sword, and lives in some kind of spiritual world and has an impact upon humanity from some kind of superior spiritual realm. What is going on with us as a species? I mean, deism itself is not necessarily a religion per se. Deists don't tend to accept dogma, but instead there are deists who have created dogma. And you would have thought that in a group of people who don't accept dogma, there would actually be something inside them that would repel against dogma and would look towards analogy. Now, again, if I was to try and find a deist box to put myself in, the closest one I could come to would be PanEndeist, but I would be a non-literal PanEndeist, because a conception of God to myself, if it exists at all, would be superior to that of the universe. It would not be purely within the universe. It would be something which is superior, hence transcendental. But would also have some kind of, I suppose, presence associated with nature, and there would be some kind of statement that it would have some kind of importance to nature, and that therefore that term would be applicable. But yeah, as humans know so little about the universe in general, it would have to be a statement that which is known is pathetic by comparison to that which is superior and therefore spiritual. But there are literalists, PanEndeists, who have a literal creation myth associated with PanEndeism, which to me blows the mind. There doesn't seem to be analogy or representation of something superior within cultures that become religious. I know it's uncomfortable for humans. I mean, if your label is taken away, or your label is being challenged, or your views are being attacked substantially, it can be frightening or disconcerting. It can make you feel that your arguments and the things that you have built your life and your mind upon are being eradicated, and you also feel weak and vulnerable and being under attack. But there isn't anything that you could be that wouldn't actually lead you to be under attack from somebody else, which basically means that that level of fear is irrational, but it's also very necessary and very human. It's almost like it's part of our tribal heritage that we think in this way. It feels to me almost like an instinct that goes back to when we were primitive and, you know, humankind had been created in its very early days, and our tribal belonging was more important to us than anything else, as it was a survival technique. And this same survival technique is still with us. And it's within the labels that we give ourselves and the alleged rationales that we have for something of a spiritual nature. I mean, when you're someone who does a lot of meditation, prayer, and the rest of it, there is this feeling that, yes, it does appear that sometimes you're touching something which is outside of yourself and above yourself, but it's also something which has some kind of correlation to or connection to your very being, or something which is inside you. It doesn't matter what it is that you're meditating upon or praying with or thinking about, or the symbols that you're using. There is something almost as if it becomes part of your internal organs, and it becomes something that you will want to defend, just as you'll want to defend your brain and your heart when you're in a fight, which is difficult because it becomes more irrational unless you've got the ability to slowly and surely challenge your own ideas and build upon the level or the state or the aspect of being which you have become as a result of religious exercises as a foundation to build something better on with the passage of time. It's still a very uncomfortable feeling for many people to go through the process of change. And a lot of the times, you're not actually changing. It just feels like you're changing as you're trying to redefine yourself, or trying to redefine what it means to be you, when in fact it isn't really redefining what it means to be you. It's redefining something that you do in a very small percentage of your day, or something which you're only thinking about on a very limited part of your being. So the question you then find yourself asking yourself is, how important is that in the first place? Because it touches on your mind, it touches on something which is a part of yourself, something which you have internalized. It's not like it's become your teddy bear. It's like it feels like it's become part of your heart, or part of your brain, or part of your body. Well, I suppose in a literal sense, it has become part of your brain, because the ideas that you have, and the way that you think, and the emotions and the rest of it that you have, is part of the structure of your brain. If you do a lot of meditation, it affects the structure of your brain, full stop. Okay? I suppose that if you stop believing in the thing that you are meditating upon, then the ability of the meditation itself to adjust your brain via neuroplasticity and neurogenesis might become weakened. And so your the goal of building up that particular structure in your brain could become more distant, or your ability to get there could be eradicated. So even if you're doing meditation to help you to grow different structures in your brain, having a challenge to your beliefs could actually prevent that from occurring. That's just well, it's not even a theory, it's a hypothesis based upon a few strands of knowledge and information that I've picked up through trying to find stuff out. Because as humans, we're not reason-able people. Humans can't always operate on the level of pure and perfect reasoning. We're not capable of that. This internal struggle that I'm going through is possibly symptomatic of my brain trying to rebuild a new structure rebuild a structure inside itself. Just like when you go through the process of trying to learn a new game, like you play the Chinese game called Go, or let's say you try to learn chess, and you will try and improve your chess playing skills, and you play chess on the computer, let's say, every single day for many, many weeks or months. You'll find yourself dreaming about chess at night, because that's when your brain is fathoming how to learn about the pieces and the moves, and is turning your brain into a better machine to be able to operate within the sphere of the game of chess or the game of Go. It's not too much of a wild extrapolation for me to suggest that when a person is going through redefining themselves religiously and spiritually, something very similar is happening. The brain itself is trying to learn or trying to adjust to a new set of principles, emotions, thoughts, and feelings. Not only to see whether some of them can be appropriate or some of them are inappropriate, but also to incorporate them into the human being itself, and thus to regrow the brain until the individual becomes what it is they're aspiring to become. If neuroplasticity and neurogenesis are correct, when a person is trying to become a something, they are possibly, literally, changing the structure of their brain to become that thing. And therefore they're trying to become literally a different type of being. And therefore there's probably a growth aspect associated with that. And maybe humans themselves don't want to grow up. They don't want to change. And they want something which is stable, which they can rely upon and they can believe in. And that's why we have religious literalism. Because concepts which are within religion are too abstract for humans to be able to cope with. Some abstracts we can personify to make it easier for us, such as justice, holding the scales and the sword, and potentially being a hot chick depending upon how she's being portrayed. But when it comes to God and what it was that came before the universe, people panic. They can't handle it. And they can't be, because of the nature of the massiveness of these concepts. Any, and I mean any, religious group which can be completely free of literalism. I think that would make some sense. I mean, obviously that's just me making some guesswork in the dead of the night when I can't sleep and I've got a lousy cold and I look like death. But, you know, I think that would make some sense. Anyway, thank you, boys, girls, lords, ladies, and gentlemen, for listening to my ramble. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon sometime. Bye for now.